All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our debut program participants. Thank you to everyone else who's joining as well. This Kickstarter Booster session that we are hosting as part of the debut program 2020 all the way to 2022. My name is Dumi with a Y, for those of you who don't know me or who have forgotten who I am, and I'm currently the head of programs at Business and Arts South Africa. So this is our second session as part of the Kickstarter Booster sessions. And as I mentioned earlier, these sessions are really aimed at, bridging some of the gaps that we identified while we hosted our national online workshops. It's also an opportunity for us to deepen some of the information and content that we have been exploring. And one of those subject areas is really around how do we position ourselves online, how do we share our work online, and how do we connect to new markets, to new clients, to new corporates, to new partners online. We know that 2020 was a little bit of a, of a booster or a challenge or a catalyst, depending on how you're seeing it, but really an opportunity for us to revise, to revisit some of our mechanisms, our tools, our processes. And I think one of them that we're all, jumping on, are clear about, is that digital is here and digital is here to support us. And so we thought that as part of these Kickstarter workshops, we would host a session around the website. The Hlanganisa participants will know that by the end of this program, we want to be able to host a provincial art fair, number one. Number two, to have online stores for all of our participants where they can share their craft, their work, and be able to make money off of it. So we're hoping that this session will start to, get us thinking around ways in which we can do that. So I'm not your host for this session. We have partnered with an organization called Min Creative Co., one of our BASA members, new BASA members actually, and we're very, very excited because we're partnering with artists and businesses in a meaningful way, in a way that allows us to really pull back into the ecosystem. So today we've got an amazing speaker. We've got Msimeki. He is the managing director and founder actually of Min Creative Co. He's a brand builder for different brands and different businesses. He also says he loves coffee. He loves reading and actually also loves sharing knowledge. So we're very, very excited because we can't wait. We can't wait to hear what you have in store for us, what you have to share with us today. And I don't want to waste any more time. I'm sure people are very, very excited on Facebook, on Zoom. Please share your comments, your input using the chat section. And then you can also post your questions in the Q&A button throughout the conversation. And I'm hoping that Msimeki will be able to answer those questions during the session or at the end when we have our Q&A session. So Msimeki, I don't want to waste any more time. Handing over to you, sir, to really take us through this exciting presentation. I know that you have been preparing for some time. I'm equally as excited. So yeah, take it away, have fun to all our participants as well. And thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Good afternoon to everyone who has come to attend this. My name is Msimeki Nkatingi, and I am the managing director of Min Creative Co. To not waste too much time, I think I just want to get straight into this presentation. So essentially what I'll be doing is I'll be taking us through a presentation on the Web-in website, which is essentially the web part of it. If you think of a spider and its web, it connects a lot of things. And that's one thing that websites are very good at doing. And in this particular case, for most of you guys who are in the BASA debut program, as artists, you would want to probably connect with fellow collaborators, fellow artists to collaborate with, potential clients for the work that you produce, and corporates who you can maybe partner with or might even be able to sponsor some of the ideas that you may have. To give you just a little insight, who we are Min Creative Co., a branding and marketing company that connects our clients to their clients. We're collaborating with BASA to provide value to their various members, partners, and stakeholders. And this is done through the sharing of knowledge in the creative industry. Our goal is to, in this particular case, is to equip the BASA debut program participants with insights and skills on the use of a website in their goal to connecting with potential collaborators, clients, and corporates. So because this entire talk that I'm giving is based around what the website can do for you, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look into what is a website. So the Google definition that pops up when you Google website is it's a set of related web pages located under a single domain name, typically produced by a single person or an organization. So maybe let me just break down a few things within this. So a set of web pages. So if you exclude the word web and you just think pages, when something is a set of pages, it becomes a book. And in this particular case, if you think of your website more like a book or a brochure, you're already on the right path. So it's located under a single domain name. A domain name is essentially the something.com or .co.za or .net. So maincreative.co, for example, is a domain name, and BASA or Business and Art South Africa.co.za is a domain name. So in your case, maybe it would be artist.com, and that would be your domain name. But essentially what a website is very useful for is that it serves as a profile and a portfolio for who you are and what you do online. Now, what you definitely want to look at is the things that go into a website. There are 4 things that when you're creating a website, you definitely do not want your website to not have, especially in this particular case for what I am speaking to you guys about. The first thing is that you need contact information. This is usually sometimes not on your homepage, but most likely the most important thing, that if I found you, how do I contact you? This can be things like your address, this can be phone numbers, email, even your social media handles, because we live in a very social media time. But essentially we need your contact information. The second thing that we look for is information about you. Now, this information about you is not the same as your contact information, because essentially information about you is who you are, what you do, what you represent, what you believe in, who you essentially kind of worked with in the past, and essentially. The third thing that you definitely want to have as an artist in this particular case is any previous and current projects. So you definitely want to share some of the work that you've done in the past. And one of the things that really does help, and we'll touch back on this later on, especially when we start looking at collaborators, is to start sharing some of the stuff that you're working on now. What this does is that it just gives people confidence to know that you're still relevant and you're still working and there's still things to look forward to. And then the last thing, which is quite popular and was a very big thing last year after the pandemic, are any items that you're selling. You know, we live in a time where a website is essentially your ticket to the rest of the world. And if you want to connect with someone in Russia or someone in India or someone in Australia or someone in Ghana or Nigeria or Egypt, the best way to do is to be able to just try to sell your work online. So essentially, these are the 4 things that I would advise a really good website, especially for an artist, to have. I will share this presentation with the guys from BASA. So if you are taking notes, but I'm going a little bit too fast, that's fine. You can access the information later. So the next thing is, where do you start? Now that you know that you need a website and that you have to start building, and it has to have these 4 things. So when it comes to website, the first thing that we look for is something called a content management system. And it's called a CMS. So you might hear this term thrown around a lot amongst people that create websites, CMS. And a content management system essentially does what it does. It manages the content that you put online. That's essentially what manages the videos, the words, the text, the images, and any sound that you may put online. Famous CMS systems that you may have heard of are WordPress. Some of you may have also heard of one called Wix. They like to advertise a lot. Another one that you may have heard of is Shopify. That's another CMS system. Another one is called Drupal. But essentially, the best way to go about it is to find a good content management system. The second thing that you definitely want to look at once you've now said, hey, I kind of have an idea of what these content management systems are about, is to decide whether you're going to go open source versus membership CMSs. So there's a vast difference between an open source and a membership CMS. So something like Wix.com, for those that might be familiar with it, is that that's a membership CMS. Something like WordPress, on the other hand, is an open source CMS or content management system. I will, in the next 2 slides, get into what the pros and cons for each are, and how each one can meet you where you are. The last thing that you definitely want to look at is you want to decide on the layout and the look and feel of your website. Essentially, you're an artist, and outside of what you write about yourself and the pictures that you may put on this particular website of yours, you definitely want it to be laid out in a way which represents what you're about. So things like colors, logos, fonts, you definitely want that to come through in relaying who you are to the viewer. For those of you who have maybe a familiarity with branding comes in on the website. In fact, in most cases, what we do is that we consider your website as part of your branding, because essentially most people, that's where they go to when they meet you or hear about you. So now in the next slide, I'm going to look into open source CMSs. So you may have heard me mention WordPress earlier on, and WordPress is probably the most famous open source CMS. Some of the biggest websites in the world use WordPress. One that is very famous and that does use WordPress is the New York Times. The New York Times is based on WordPress, which is an open source CMS. They've been doing this for years. It allows the people who create their articles to put articles up very easily. And the thing about this particular CMS is that it's got control measures and things like features that allow certain people to enter into the dashboard or into the back end and have certain access to certain things. So you're able to have multiple people contribute to your website, but without having access to the entire website. This comes in handy, for example, if you're selling things and you maybe want somebody who you just want to write blogs, but you don't want them to have access to what you're selling on your particular website. So I'm going to look into the pros and cons of open source as opposed to membership based. So the first pro for open source CMS is that it can be more cost effective. Big disclaimer, the word is it can be, so it has that potential. I see somebody has asked me a question. I'll attend to your questions at the end of the session. But essentially, with regards to this, it can be more cost effective simply because once anything is open source, it's given out to anyone to use as they please to try and do what they can with it. Essentially, for example, our website, Admin Creative Co, is based on WordPress, and because we have this particular skill set in terms of being able to code on WordPress, it then becomes very cheap for us to run it. The second one is that system updates on open source CMSs tend to be more frequent. And the main reason for this is that you've got a whole lot of developers throughout the world that always contribute to the betterment of this. That is usually the case with most open source softwares, that developers, you have this community of developers which are always working to fix things like bugs if they may occur, and the likes. The third thing that is a big pro with I guess I've just spoken about that. So essentially, yeah, you've got a huge community of developers. Now, with regards to this, it's not only with regards to the system updates that developers make. It's also for things like features that may come up. You have somebody who will then develop a plugin or some kind of code and say, hey, to people on WordPress, there's this, if TikTok just came out and, for example, people are trying to figure out how to integrate TikTok into their website, it's very likely that somebody's just going to develop a plugin for that, which makes it much easier for people. But on the other hand is that if you are working on your website and you are using an open source content management system, you literally just have to go on like freelancer.com and just look for a WordPress developer, and thousands of WordPress developers will come out there. Not saying that they're all good, but essentially there's enough people going around. The last biggest pro is that you as the owner of this is your website, actually own the code or the website. You're not tied down to having to host it with a specific hosting company, and you can take it out and go host it somewhere else. You can take it on and off, but essentially the code belongs to you if you've either coded it or commissioned for it to be coded by someone else. So now I'm going to look at some of the cons of these open source systems. The first big one is that it requires specialized skills. It's not as easy to use, especially if you're unfamiliar with it. It can be quite intimidating. For a lot of people who have started, it is easy to learn, but it's not easy to use per se. Whereas, there are people who have tried to make it easy to use by providing things like plugins where you can drag and drop things on your website. But every time you bump into a problem, and if you're not familiar with it, you'll realize that maybe this isn't the easiest thing to go about. So this is the first con of these. You actually need the skills to be able to do it. The second thing is the security on the site is left up to you, the creator or the owner of the site. This may be provided by your hosting company if you decide to host your company with, for example, a company that we use is called Connect. They're based in Polokwane in Johannesburg. Connect.africa is their domain name, and that's essentially who we use to host with. So what they do whenever we create a new website is that they'll provide us with a free secure socket link certificate, SSL certificate, for whatever website we're creating. But with free SSL certificates, there are also certain shortcomings that may happen, and it makes it more prone for hackers to try and hack your website because they know that most people don't secure their website. So security is left up to you, and if you don't know what you're doing, you might leave your door wide open thinking that you've actually shut the doors. The third thing is that software updates actually require someone to actively monitor the website. So unlike with membership, which we'll get to, with open source, as much as system and software updates may be more frequent, you actually need to go there and kind of monitor if the software update is working, if it's not breaking the website and things like that. So they need somebody who's actively making sure that the website is still up. It might be yourself in case you are familiar with it, then that becomes great. And then the last con that we have is that often good developers don't come cheap. A lot of the time when somebody comes to us and says, hey, for example, I paid 3,000 Rand for a website and the experience just hasn't been great and the person isn't doing what I wanted them to do or what we discussed, the conversation is usually, you kind of get what you pay for. So there's always that. There's an opportunity cost to everything. So essentially, those are the pros and cons in terms of open source CMSs. Although when you are a developer, this is probably your most favorite type of CMS, content management system, that you like to use. Just like we do at Min Creative Code, we prefer open source CMSs because there's more flexibility for us on our side, and what we can do isn't limited as opposed to membership-based CMSs, and we can create anything from the ground up when it's an open source CMS. Now, I will look at membership CMSs. Now, membership CMSs, to give you an idea of what the big difference is here with something like Wix, which is a membership CMS, is that you need to then sign up as a member of the platform. So Wix, for example, or Weebly, which is another one, requires you to sign in as a member with your email address. They'll have a free plan. The free plan will usually mean that your domain name, if you remember, I mentioned domain names are your mincreative.co, Connect.africa, BASA.co.za type of vibe. So when you're on the free plan with membership CMSs, they will often make you say your domain name has to be mincreative.wix.com. So now, when you're communicating yourself as an artist or as a business or as anyone else, you essentially have to advertise Wix every time you share your website. And it also becomes less memorable. But there are plans which they have where you can have it as a mincreative.co or select.africa or BASA, et cetera, et cetera. The only issue with that is that it now has a monthly cost, usually starting from the likes of $10 a month, which, you know, in South African rands is around 150 Rand a month. They will give you templates in which it's drag and drop, very easy to edit, and. So now I'll get into the pros and cons of that. So I hope that I've kind of given membership content management systems a bit of justice in that explanation. So the first pro is that these are much easier to edit and work with. In 2011, I think I was working on a website. I had no idea what developing was, but what I knew is that I needed a website, and I logged on to Wix. Wix was essentially the first way I personally learned how to make websites. And all it was I picked a template and I could just drag and drop things. It was extremely easy to use. Almost anyone who can use a computer can do it. If you can use PowerPoint, then you can definitely use a membership CMS. That's how easy it is to use. The second thing is that when a membership CMS updates their system, your website will not break. Because it's an ecosystem which is built for its members only, when they update the entire system, it doesn't matter what theme you've used, what pictures you've used, what videos you've used, they've taken all their themes into account. Whereas with regards to an open source CMS, because there's so many different contributors, when WordPress, for example, updates itself, it can't take into account the fact that Msimeki created his code going that way and Manda created his code going that way. So essentially, there is a chance that Manda's code or Msimeki's code might not react as it should to a new update. Whereas with membership CMSs, because you are a paying member or you're a member that is on the freemium subscription, which advertises them, they'll always make sure that when they update, the update won't break anything. So the next one is that security is always guaranteed by the platform provider. So the moment you're on a Wix, your website is on a Wix, is on the Wix plan, because your website is being hosted on the Wix servers. Wix makes sure, or whatever membership CMS that you're using, makes sure that they protect their servers against any potential hackers so this usually works in the advantage of their clients, because you then don't have to worry about whether hackers can access your information, because it's almost like your Google emails. You don't have to worry about if people can access those. Yes, there have been a few instances here and there, but in the large part, if your emails are being hosted with the likes of Google or Apple, you trust that those companies have done what they need to in order to protect all your information. And that's the same thing with CMSs. This comes in very handy, especially when you have things like online stores. So the fourth thing is that website themes on these are readily available. So you'll find that with membership CMSs, they'll provide you like 1,000 different themes to speak, that kind of speak to different people. In some cases, they'll even put them in categories that say, hey, if you're a photographer, these themes are likely to work for you. If you're a baker, these themes are likely to work for you. So it makes it much easier for you to then, they kind of like guide you through the entire thing. And it's the same way if you use PowerPoint or Keynote or Google Slides. If you select a theme that says, hey, speaks to a business, it's much easier to edit than to start from the ground up. Now we look at some of the cons that membership CMSs, content management systems have. The first one is, no, it doesn't require specialized skills. Okay, I think there's just a few errors here. Okay, cool. I think we might have just repeated this on the slides, but essentially, to kind of just speak to what the CMS is, the first con is that the CMS requires you to subscribe. So you have to keep paying them. And the moment you don't want to pay, you're not a member, they kick you out. It's just like a gym membership. If you want to use the machines, you have to pay the gym. And the moment you don't use the machines, the moment you don't pay the gym, you can't use the machines. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the content actually doesn't belong to you. So you can't say, well, I'm leaving Wix, give me my website, I'm going to someone else. The moment you leave Wix, you leave the website with them. So that's the second thing that is a big con of membership-based content management systems that you might not always, want to deal with. And then the last one is that developers aren't as easily available. So when you have an error on your website, you essentially have to contact them to try and fix it. Whereas with an open source, as I said, you just go to freelancer.com and you've got a large pool of developers who are able to then say, oh, okay, cool, I think I know how to integrate such and such a thing. And the fourth thing is that there are huge limitations in terms of customizability. So if you're a person who wants to pay to the T, you want everything to look a certain way, you definitely want to be able to customize certain things. You definitely want that if there's a new feature going around, that it's already there. You don't want to have to wait for the membership CMS to say, well, now we support that feature or this feature. So I'll give you one thing. For the longest time, Wix didn't support mobile websites. So you would build this beautiful website on your computer, and then everybody was starting to go mobile because people were starting to browse more on their smartphones. And what they started finding was that if you had a Wix website, you essentially had to wait for them to support mobile websites where the thing integrates and is mobile friendly. So that's essentially that. Those are the cons of these. Now into our topic at hand, which is how do you then use your website to connect with potential collaborators? I know for a lot of artists, this is a big thing because art is a very community-based activity and a very community-based essentially form of business and income within the society we live in. The first thing that you want to do is you definitely want to try and integrate some kind of blog. And you definitely want to share your journey with regards to the kind of work that you're doing. How this helps is that often what you find with other collaborators is that they like to follow each other's stories. They like to be in each other's lives. They like to find out more about each other. So in 2012, there used to be a big blog. There used to be a blog called Tumblr, which was quite big. I'm sure there's a few artists in here who might be familiar with it. And I'll just kind of give you a little story about what Tumblr was able to do for me. With Tumblr, at the time, I stayed in Cape Town. And with what Tumblr was able to do for me was that it helped me connect with guys that were in Joburg doing artistic things. They were doing photography, they were doing styling, they were doing design and creating videos and things like that. How this happened was that I was just blogging things that I saw around the city of Cape Town. And because people took interest in seeing what Cape Town looked like, though they were in Joburg, people started talking to me, hey man, I really like this. And what blogging did is that it allowed, or that what blog, I had a personal website, but what that blog function did is that it allowed people to then, wanted to collaborate or just even want to talk and have meetings and things like that. The second thing that you definitely want to do is you want to integrate your social media feeds. So I know some people may not be on social media, but if you are an artist and connecting is one thing that you want to do, the biggest form of connection or the easiest form of connection that we have at the moment is social media. So you definitely want to use something like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the likes, and you want to integrate that into your website. You also want to integrate your website into your social media. So where it says, what's the link to your website, you definitely want to put that there. You'd be very surprised at how many people want to know more about you, but social media doesn't really give them enough. And remember what we started off by saying, your website is essentially a place where you can create a profile of some sort. And you can kind of, it's like the book to who you are, and it's endless. Whereas something like Instagram may not allow you to have that space, or Twitter with its limitation of characters may not allow you to essentially share as much as a website may. And then the last thing that you may want to do in order to connect with collaborators is that you might want to open up some discussion forums. You'd be very surprised at how many people like talking and sharing ideas. A good thing to definitely integrate into website are discussion forums. You don't want to have a website where you're just talking at people. Interaction is probably the best thing that you can get when you're trying to collaborate and connect with people. So this is one thing that you definitely want to look at. So we've kind of spoken about collaborators. Now the big one, which is like clients, because people have to make a living. And it's also nice if you're in South Africa to get paid in foreign currency because you're selling to people who are, out of the country. It's great to be in a village somewhere and essentially shipping off your work to, somewhere else in the world, or a gallery of some sort somewhere out there. The first thing that you want to do is you want to then look at how you can integrate an e-commerce feature onto your website. Now, to take you back to our open source versus membership CMS conversation again, when it comes to online shops, the ones that are definitely easier to integrate are membership content management systems, simply because they're built in a way to facilitate whatever happens within their ecosystem. The one that might be a bit more difficult, especially if you don't have the skills, is using an open source method. Now, it's not to say that the one is better than the other. In fact, one of the most popular membership-based CMSs, based on its fact of being an online store, is Shopify. I'm sure many people are aware of Shopify. Shopify is probably one of the easier and most popular online store CMSs that you can get. Their whole business model is based on helping people sell. And for some artists, maybe you may associate Shopify with things like fashion and whatever, but essentially Shopify is there for anybody who has anything to sell. And if you want to sell your art, Shopify is probably a great place to start. At Mint Creative Co., because we saw that this was a big thing, we then became official Shopify partners in South Africa, so that we're able to help build people's brands and online businesses if they prefer Shopify. So you're able to then partner with us, and we're able to then log in as an admin on our side onto your website and edit whatever it is that you may need us to edit, while you still have full control and ownership of your Shopify page on your other side. So that's one big thing that you might want to consider if you want to open up. Now, obviously, with an online shop, when you think of an online shop, think of the same things you would think of in any shop. People want to see, so make sure you have pictures. People want to, because they can't touch, you definitely want to have things like descriptions. So if you paint, you definitely want to write what kind of canvas you're using, what kind of material. Is it paper? Is it fabric? And what kind of paint are you using? Oil paints or the likes. So you definitely want to be able to communicate what it is that you are using, and so that even if somebody can't touch it, your description is able to give them some kind of sense of what it is that they're looking at. So these are the things that you definitely want to look at when you create an online shop. The first thing is you want to create a catalog that showcases your work properly. Now, this you do by taking good pictures. You also do by describing. Is my painting 2 meters wide and 1 meter high? If I'm singing or if I'm making music, you might want to give samples of your songs so that people just have a sample, or the likes. If you do things which require you to, like, if you make statues, you definitely want to showcase that properly. You want to take very good pictures. A lot of us, fall in love with things because we see them, and then we essentially then want them from that. So don't take it for granted what kind of pictures you take. So you definitely want to showcase this catalog of your work quite properly. The second thing is that you want to have your prices up in order to sell them. Everybody hates especially when it comes to things that are very straightforward. If you're selling clothes, if you're selling art, people hate having to DM you to find out how much certain things cost. In some cases with specific services, I can understand, because, you know, if somebody wants to commission, if you're the kind of artist who maybe people commission paintings, I can understand why you then wouldn't have prices up. But if you know the prices, it's much easier to sell, because the interaction just goes through much smoothly. I see something I like because you've showcased your work in your catalog properly. I'm wondering how much it is. It says, okay, there it is. It's R1. Okay, I think I have R1.50 in my account. Let me buy this. So that's definitely the second thing that you want to look at. The third thing that you want to look at is, if you're using an open source CMS, you definitely want the site to be secured. And you don't want, if you're selling things online, to use a free SSL certificate. And the reason for this is, it makes it much easier for hackers to be able to decrypt the information that your site and the person who's viewing your site are sending back and forth to each other. So the last thing you want anyone to do is to come to your site, buy something with their credit card or their debit card, and only to find that that information was stolen because there was a third party who was actually lurking on your website. So you definitely want to make sure that your site is very secured. You might want to buy an SSL. Also depending, I also always advise clients, based on what kind of clientele that you may have, you might want to spend more money based on the kind of clientele. So we recently had a client that wanted to sell high-end fashion. And my advice to them was that the SSL that they would probably most likely want to use is the same one that Apple uses in California, which I think was going for around 6,000 Rand a year. And the reason for this is that if they're selling sneakers to people who are willing to buy sneakers for, at the time, maybe 20,000 Rand, 30,000 Rand for a pair of shoes, these are probably individuals with a lot of money within their bank accounts. Now, something like that makes a hacker, I mean, if I'm aware of that, then a hacker's aware of that. If they're aware that people who buy on your website buy 100,000 Rand up, then they're aware that if somebody's willing to swipe for 100,000 Rand up, chances are they may have 1 million Rand in their account. This then makes it more likely that hackers will target your website. And in that case, you definitely want to get the top of the top secure security certificates, so that you don't risk anything like that. The fourth thing that you want is, you want to have a payment system. Now, most banks will tell you which kind of payment systems that they integrate. Payment systems may be things like PayPal and SnapScan. A very popular one, and I guess I'm giving free advertising now, is PayFast in South Africa. So that integrates quite well with a lot of both membership CMSs like Shopify, but also WordPress. So you want to have a payment system. Now, with payment systems, you always have to remember, if somebody's facilitating a payment for you, they're essentially taking a little piece of whatever it is that you're getting paid. So you definitely want to have a proper payment system that you use, so that it makes it easier for funds to flow into your account, and you can have your money and you can go about your way in terms of sending whatever work to whoever it needs to get to. Then the second and last thing that you definitely want to do when you connect with clients is that you want to use social media to advertise. Instagram and Facebook, for example, Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp do this very well, where you are able to put your catalogs onto your WhatsApp business page, your Facebook business page, and your Instagram business page. Now, what they also do is that they allow you to lay out your entire catalog and link to your website in ways that, if I'm scrolling through my Instagram and I see your painting and it's there and it's like it's 1 Rand, I'm like, okay, I like this painting. The moment I click on it, it takes me to your website, and then we're able to facilitate the purchase of this particular website, of this particular item. So you definitely want to use the social media to advertise. You also definitely want to use it in a way where you make sure that these two are interlinked. When it comes to connecting with clients, there's a saying, don't play with your money. And you essentially don't want anything to play with that. You don't want anything to come between you and your potential or current or future client. So we've essentially spoken about collaborators and clients, and now we get to the last part, which is how to connect with corporates. Now, for a lot of artists, this is a big one, because sometimes the art you're creating isn't necessarily mainstream and isn't necessarily doing well in terms of sales, but you love what you're doing, and not only that, it's quite important to the community that you're doing it in. In some cases, you may not even be well known out there, but all you need is a corporate to say, hey, we like that guy, let's have him at our art show. Literally, that can be the make or break for a lot of artists. Now, one of the big things that a lot of corporate clients love is social work. And when I say social work, is essentially how your work affects society in this particular case. You definitely want, if you are involved in any kind of outreach, if you're involved in any kind of work that benefits the community, if your art itself speaks to specific topics that are going around that people definitely need to hear about, you definitely want to share as much of this on your website. You want to tell as good of a story as you can of yourself. If you can't write, get somebody to write for you. The person doesn't even have to be professional. You can find the best writer that you know to write for you, because if you don't blow your own horn, chances are no one else will. So you definitely want to look at a situation where you are sharing as much of the social work on your website. And this is usually done in a tab which you may call partners or about us, etc., etc. Now, I will take you to the next thing, is that you want to use your website as a profile when you send proposals. One of the things is that in a proposal, you might want, in some cases, you might make a short presentation which just wants to get straight to the point about what you want. Hey, company X, I am working on creating 5 canvas paintings that speak to drivers in Gauteng. I would like you as an insurance company to partner with me with this particular campaign. Now, company X, now your proposal to them may look like that simply because you don't want to tell them what your dog eats for lunch. You essentially just want to speak to what it is that you need from them and how you see them fitting into your project. However, company X may be like, who is this guy called Smith Nkatingi? I've never heard of him. And essentially, my website is for more information, you can check this out on my website. And then they're able to then go onto the website and then say, oh, okay, cool. I see they've worked with this and that brand. Oh, I see that they are BASA members. Oh, okay, I see that they've given a video or on websites. Okay, cool. This is how big their team is. This is where they're based. You see, so websites really allow you to have a further conversation without somebody even having to call you. So you definitely want to make sure that all these things are there for when corporates do bump into some of your proposals that you guys may be sending out, that they are then able to, essentially websites work as a way of they may validate something which, a question which, or a question mark which may be like over your head. They may validate that, okay, this person is genuinely somebody we want to work with. The next thing is, you definitely want to share the concept of what you need sponsorships on. In some cases, if you're working on something but you don't know who to reach out to, your website is probably the best place to put all the work. It allows you to then, it's a free for all to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you guys like it? And if you do, please hop on board, help us out. Feel free to connect with me in any way possible, and the likes. So essentially, those are like the main 3 points. I know that for a lot of the stuff that I've spoken to, there are more points that we could get into, but essentially for the sake of trying to get this all done and just kind of giving you a rough look at in the next 10 minutes before we go into the Q&A, I just kind of like spoke straight to the main, or to the core points, which I believe an artist who wants to get into business, or who is in business, whether as a freelancer or as an official business, but essentially who needs to sell what they do, would need. So with that said, thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming through to this presentation. I now just want to take the next 10 minutes or the final 15 minutes of this presentation just to take you through what a CMS backend looks like. So I'll take you through the Min Creative Co CMS backend, which is on WordPress, so that you guys can kind of get an idea of how difficult or easy it is, and then we'll come back to the question and answer session. All right, so I'm just sharing my screen. Let's see, Min Creative Co. All right, just waiting for this to load. Perfect. So I'm just loading this very quickly just to give you guys an idea of what this looks like. So this is our homepage. Just gonna move that there. This is our homepage on the Min Creative Co website. This is what people see when they visit us. This is essentially all the work that we do. What we have there is our menu bar and a briefing form part. Now, what you guys just saw here, this is what it looks like in the back. This is how it's built. So for some of you guys, this may be like, okay, cool, where would I start? But essentially we do all the building around here. And that's essentially where we then build for it. We've integrated a lot of things like search engine optimization, et cetera, et cetera. So when you look at something like this, you then realize that, hey, maybe it's not as easy as you thought. Now I'm gonna go into something called the Visual Composer from a front end. Now, even though this is WordPress, they've tried to create something which looks very similar to what the membership CMSs look like. Now, a membership CMS like Wix, had we built this website on that, would look something like this, where all you can do is just, if you want to add an image, you just drag it and you drop it, and there's an image, you know, and you build the website as you go along. You add, so maybe you want a video as well, you drag, you drop, and essentially that's how a lot of and there's a video. And then what you would then do is you would preview what that looks like. So I'm just gonna preview this. I'm not gonna save it, lest I damage our website. All right, cool. I think it's some reason not, okay, it is loading. So you start to see, you know, I just dragged it, I dropped it, and if I were to publish the website, this is what the Min Creative Co website would start to look like from now on. And essentially, these are features that, you know, are easier. It's much easier when you're on a membership CMS. You know, by the time you get to this, with regards to an open source CMS, you kind of need to have done some things already, which might need specialized skills. Whereas with the membership CMS, it's much easier. So I just wanted to give you guys like a rough idea of what that can look like. So I'm just going to cancel this and go back to that. So let me just come back to this. So yeah, essentially that's what we're looking at when we try to create websites. I'll open the floor up to questions. I can see that there are already 5 questions within the presentation. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, if that's fine, and then I'll just have a look at some of the questions. Okay, cool. So I'm going to start with Riabetsu Catherine Matubako. I hope I said your name right. I really hope I did. So the first question that Ria Betsui asks is, even if I am not an IT technician, can I design it myself, or must I get a service provider who can do it for me? Essentially, you can design it yourself. You know, usually if you really want to design it yourself, usually the best place to go is just to Google design my own website, and the top membership CMSs will start popping up. What you will then do is you will pick a theme, and then from there you'll start editing. Make sure that you have all your content, because then it'll make it much easier for you. So you can design it yourself. However, there are limitations. The thing about membership CMSs is that what they will show you as an example website, you know, will look glamorous and finished and things like that. And then when you start creating, it's like, but why is it not hlanganing like the one that they showed me in the example? And sometimes it's just a matter of, even that may require a little bit of skill. But the simple answer is yes, you can design it yourself. But should you get stuck, that's where a service provider can really come in. And that's where guys like us come in. That's where we try to fill in the gap, especially when people are very peculiar about what they want. I hope I've answered your question well. The second question that I've got is from Obed Dikoka. I hope I said your name right as well. He says, good day, sir. How much would it cost to have a website set up? Now, this usually depends on a few things. It depends on how big your website is and what functionality it does. The third biggest contributor to web cost is labor. Well, if not probably the biggest contributor to web cost. And depending on how skilled the developer that you're using is, that might then, you know, go from as little as 3,000 Rand the whole way up to R1 million. The more skills you require and the more intricate your website is, the more money you may need. But, you know, there's a lot of guys out there who are creating websites for as little as 3,000 Rand. They have payment plans and things like that. And most of them, if not all of them, probably use WordPress because it's an open source CMS. So there's very little cost in terms of them. So essentially the 3,000 Rand just goes straight to their labor. However, this does have its own limitations. And the biggest limitation is that, you know, if somebody has to build something from scratch, sometimes they may not have the skill sets to make certain parts of the website perform the way you need them to perform. With something like an e-commerce website, I would highly advise that you avoid people who aren't tried and tested. And you know the old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. So that's a big one for me. When it comes to e-commerce, because there's money exchanging hands, you definitely want it to be done right. So I would say in that case, you might try to be more willing to spend a little bit of money. And then from Godfrey Seribe, I hope I said that right as well. Is it expensive to create a website? And if not, how expensive is it to maintain it? Is it a guaranteed that if I open one myself, I'll make more money? So I think that's a very good question. I think there's a few questions within that. So the first one, I think I've already answered. Is it expensive to create a website? That literally depends on what kind of website you're trying to create and what the requirements are. The second one is, if not, how expensive is it to maintain it? So the one cost that you can never avoid, the two costs in website that you can never avoid, is that you need to every year buy a domain. So .co.za, so mincreative.co.za, for example, costs 75 Rand a year. That's a fee that you pay for as long as you want that domain. You have to purchase it every year. It's almost like a TV license. I guess it's like a website license. The second thing that you have to pay for, your website has to live somewhere. And this is what we call a server. A website lives on a server. and you have to essentially get your web services from somewhere. So as I mentioned, there's a company that we use, it's called Synect. Their domain is synect.africa, SYNNECT.Africa, and they provide hosting spaces. And I think they go from as little as 45 Rand per month. So with this, you know, you have your emails being hosted with them, you have your website being hosted with them. So these two costs you can't avoid, the domain and the hosting space, because it has to live somewhere. Now, the second thing that you might have to pay for is a developer. Sometimes you may have to pay 3,000 Rand, as I mentioned earlier on. In other cases, you might even have somebody who comes back and updates your website. So that's also dependent on how much skill you have. So in terms of the maintenance, you know, if you're paying Wix, Wix maintains the website for you. But you know, with Wix, you're essentially paying $10 a month, I think minimum. And the moment you stop paying, your website stops working, but it will always be maintained. So essentially you figure out with somebody who has the skill set, you say, hey, can you check out my website maybe every 3 months to see if everything's fine, and you do an update. Some guys will charge you nothing to do this. Some guys will charge you 1 Rand. Some guys will charge you 10,000 Rand, essentially. And then the last one is, if I open a website myself, is it guaranteed that I'll make more money? The answer is a simple no. It's not guaranteed. It's like, you know, as much as you know that people need to eat, if you open a supermarket tomorrow or a tuck shop, is it guaranteed that you're going to make more money? No, maybe people just don't like your tuck shop, you know? But does it give you a chance at making more money? Definitely. I think that's the one thing that people have to understand. With websites, it's not that you are going to get, like, it's definitely going to give you that guaranteed result, but it definitely does give you a chance. And the biggest thing that I can tell you is, last year we revamped our website at Mint Creative Co. Very excited. We said, man, this is the look that we want to go for. Finally going for it. And we're like, and we did everything, search engine optimized, to make sure that Google is reflecting all the right things. We've got our Instagram going. We said, we're gonna get so much clientele. And no one called. No one called, because also COVID happened. No one called. And after that exercise. But one thing that happened this year that we started seeing is that when we started connecting with other companies, or when people started, you know, hearing about us in different ways, the one thing that they did do is they went to our website. And for a lot of them, that was the thing that validated us. So essentially, without the website, we would have lost potential clients that we got through word of mouth. So think about it that way. It gives you a better chance at making more money, I guess. The next one from Tebogo Molefe is as an online TV station, when we open a website and want to have advertising space for all that approach to, is it possible for people to approach us? I'm guessing. Is it possible? For example, if a designer gives us his work to advertise, will it be possible for us to use that platform? Yes, you are able to advertise on your website. The two big ways that you can advertise on your website are, one, you can put you can create a Google Ads account on your site, and when people go onto your website and see whatever Google is advertising to the people, Google will give you money. But Google doesn't always pay as much as a direct client. So if Mini Creative Co says, man, we love your TV station, I think the people who watch your online TV station would really be great clientele to us. You can say, okay, cool. If you guys give me if we give you 5 Rand a month, you can then put our logo there. And essentially this is done, you integrate it as part of the website. It's usually done in an area called the sidebar on a website. So you would then put that there. And I hope I've answered your question there. And then, okay, okay, so there's another question from Godfrey again. And he says, would you advise a person from rural areas to open a website when clients or customers are not into the cyberspace? If anybody that I would advise to open a website, it's somebody from the rural areas, more than somebody who's from an urban area. And it's simply this: if you're in a rural area and you are not able to get to the world, your website gets to the world. You know, in Johannesburg, I'm able to go to certain spaces where I know that there's a lot of functions and networking and things like that. And just by that, I'm able to get clients for us. However, if I'm in a rural area and you find my local clientele may not even be interested in the stuff that I'm doing, the one place that makes it much easier for the world to be able to access me is a website. So if there's anyone who I would genuinely advise to go for a website, anyone in a rural area or an area which is not urban or doesn't have access to as many people as possible. In fact, it really opens up you to the world. So that's definitely a big thing. So with websites, don't think your current environment, think the world. So the next one is a question from Katlaho Mukhale. Would you recommend Bluehost? How would you rate it out of 10, 0 being terrible and 10 being excellent? So I'm not too familiar with Bluehost. I'm guessing that's a hosting company. The one that I would recommend is Connect.Africa because that's who we use. And I would give them an 11 out of 10. Yeah, essentially that's who I would. So I'm gonna go to Sanele Matebula. And Sanele asks, when starting out, would a membership CMS be the best way to start? If you've never developed in your life, and if you don't want to pay a developer, I would advise a membership CMS and use the free option. Because with membership CMSs is that some of them will give you a trial period, like Shopify, like I think it's 14 days or something. So in that 14 days, you then have to get everything done and see if you like it or not. Some of them will give you, it's free forever as long as it's your website .membershipcms.com. So I would say if you want to try your hand at it, at creating, and you don't want to have to pay anyone else, a membership CMS is definitely a good way to go. Try to go for the free options, of which, as I said, Weebly, Weebly, Wix, Wix, and Squarespace. Squarespace, these three are probably the biggest ones to probably, or the ones that I would advise for you to go to. The next question is from Tato Mutlale. Can social media substitute websites, as most people are on social media? So we get this question quite a lot, and we have clients who essentially get so much of their business on on social media that they just like, then why do I need a website? And essentially the simple answer is no, simply because of the purposes that the two serve. What you may find is that social media works for you and you just maybe don't need a website. But with regards to social media, the thing about social media is that there's so much going on that we interact with that getting, people's attention span is quite difficult. So I'll give you an example. When on social media, chances are you're scrolling through your feed. Now your feed will say Simegi, Mandla, Milton, Tapelo. You're trying to fight for all that attention. And you're hoping that, somebody likes it and then clicks through and goes to and then goes to your page. Whereas with a website, essentially either people might know you or they might just Google marketing company in my area and then find you and then go there. Now, the limitations of social media is that there's certain kind of content that social media has specific. So let's use Instagram, for example. With Instagram, you can share videos, you can share photos, you can kind of share sound, but it becomes very difficult to share information about yourself. You might have to screenshot the information, essentially giving us your biography, whereas a website facilitates that. Website also facilitates video, sound, any kind of multimedia, and etc., and all those things. Another thing is that with social media, you comment under a specific post, for example, are open for anyone to talk about anything. Whereas where you have something like a discussion forum, you know, people who are engaged in discussion forum often have the same thing in line. Like essentially they're there for the same reason. The next one is a question from Mbalin Kosi. How can I make money from my business using a website? All right, cool. I'm going to share my screen once again with everyone. Now, I am going to open one of our clients' websites. She used Shopify and we partnered with her. She opened this is Yours Beauty. It's one of our clients. And so because we are a Shopify partner, you may notice on my screen, it says navigate to admin. So we also have back-end access to it. I'm just gonna X this. So essentially what Yours Beauty did is that she started a beauty range, and she started essentially with these, okay, these are eye masks. Yeah, she started with these face sheets. This was her first product. And we were in lockdown. No one was going out, and she was like, I'm gonna start a business. She came to us, she said, hey guys, let's start this online store, help me build it. And what this helped her do is that she was able to launch a business because it was online. And we helped her build this. So you can see how, you know, you're able to add something to cart and it all comes out there, and then we're able to check out. I'm not gonna buy anything right now, sorry y'all. But from there, I'm able to then put out our information and process all of that. So to answer your question, and I can stop sharing now, how can I make money from my business by using a website? Is that you create an online store and you link your bank account to that. Now, the beauty of an online store is that the moment that card swipe, the money's in, and then you have the order, you just have to send whatever it is that you're selling. But yeah, essentially, I hope I've answered your question, Mbali. The next question is from Sanele Matebula again, and Sanele asks, what is your take on using Adobe XD software when customizing your own website? Anything from Adobe is always great. We use Adobe for all the creative work that we do. Adobe with Adobe XD has made it much easier for people to create a website. In fact, sometimes when we want to use a front end, like essentially when we want to create user interface to show to clients, we also do use Adobe XD. So Adobe XD, I'm a big fan of that. It also makes it easier for people who don't code to essentially create websites. So the answer is, my take on it is go for it. Katleho, I'm hoping I'm saying your surname right, Che. You said that if I use membership CMS, I may not be able to leave it with my consent. And then it says, isn't there an option where I can buy the content to leave with, in case I decide I want to go independent? So no, I'm gonna use the same conversation I had. It's a gym, you know, when you join a gym, when you leave and you say, I'm not paying anymore, they're like, well, you can't take the dumbbell with you. It's our dumbbell. And essentially that's what a membership CMS, it's a membership. If you're not a member, you know, essentially. So if you're not a member, you don't get any of the benefits. If they gave that option, they wouldn't be able to keep you subscribed for as long as possible. Yeah, and that's essentially it. However, what some people do is that once they decide to go independent, is that they go and recreate a website on an open source platform using that information and just, you know, copying it, and then they cancel their membership subscription. So that's another way of wanting to go independent. But in that case, you've done one thing twice, which is not something I think is efficient. The next question comes from Nkululego Dlamini, who asks, will it be easier to creatively manage my website if I have graphic design skills? Definitely does make it easier, simply because, you know, websites are a very visual experience. And the better the graphics, you know, the better, the more people want to interact with. I started out as a graphic designer, essentially, and that's how I got into websites. And over time, you learn, you teach yourself, and then you get a developer. So our developer, his name is Milton Kweli, but essentially when he does things, I'm very familiar with what he's doing, simply because the graphic design did help, especially knowing how to lay things out and knowing the rules of design, because there is a development part, which is, you know, the coding and laying out, but there's also just knowing how things should look. So definitely being a graphic designer will work in your favor. Spusisa Zulu asks, let's see. I had a WordPress website, but I had a fallout with the designer because he wouldn't do the updates on time and as agreed. Monday, he sent me the back entry logins to find someone else to do it. Since then, I've been getting WordPress security emails I don't even understand. Would you advise me to get a new website altogether or contact my host to help, or a new developer to find will be able to solve this? Essentially, you don't need a new website. Usually with these, you just need somebody who's able to look at, if you have the login details, you just need somebody who's able to look at the back end and see what plugins were installed, what security updates need to be done. And it's very easily fixable. And the only reason why you get websites is because WordPress, for example, updates quite a lot. And sometimes when they update, some of the plugins also need to be updated. So, you know, sometimes you find people trying to attack the website and things like that. So this is definitely fixable. If you're not able to do it, you can just get a developer. As I said, the best thing about open source websites is that the community is huge. There's so many developers out there, although, you know, skills may vary. And then my next question is from Sbusiso Mulefe. And it says, are SSL certificates part of a CMS choice, or you can opt for any CMS type and outsource an SSL service provider? So essentially, SSL certificates are usually with your hosting company. Whoever gives you the hosting space that you are hosting on, as well as whoever has sold you your, your domain name, the .co.za. So the best way to sort out SSL, talk to your hosting company, find out what's the best SSL to get for what you're trying to build. You can buy your SSL from Synect.Africa and go to Shopify and have a website there. So that's the great part about it. So you can outsource, mix and match where you want. The next question is from Sinazo. As an artist, does changing my website frequently affect my brand? Now, this one is a very good question. The answer is it depends on what changing your website means. If the entire look and feel of changing your website means that every time I get there, I feel like I'm in a new place, it definitely does affect your brand. Because one thing is that people love familiarity. They love places where there's consistency. You know, imagine every time you went to your local supermarket to buy groceries, you didn't know where to find the mangoes. Or if you went from a grocery joint, so think of where you probably buy your groceries. The one grocery store, there's a certain grocery store which is it's black and white and it's got a letter in the square in it. It's essentially the high-end grocery store in South Africa. The one thing about when you go into that grocery store, you know what to expect. You know, doesn't matter where in the country, whether you're in Polokwane or in Cape Town, you know where you're likely to find the chicken that they roast. It's by that side, it's in a certain area. And that's because they don't change things up often. But if you had to go to a grocery store every time and you have to start playing Hunger Games about, okay, now let's see where to find the chicken. Eventually, you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to go to Mamdoli's down the road because I know Mamdoli keeps her chicken on the left side. So it does definitely affect your brand. And then Cindy Dada asks, all good and well to have 1 million followers. However, how does one turn followers into actual paying clients? Okay, cool. So this is a different conversation from the website conversation, but we also do get this question quite a lot. Honestly, so with a lot of clients, when we have to pick influencers for their campaigns, the biggest thing is that we always look at is, are these influencers influencing or influential? So my favorite influencer to pick, probably 10 times out of 10, is Y'all's Beauty, Yolanda, because Y'all's believes in what she uses, and I know that her people that follow her believe in what she uses. I don't know how many followers she's on right now. She might be on 70,000, but Yolanda is more likely to give you value from 70,000 people than most people who have 1 million followers. Because when Yolanda says, hey, this is what I use on my skin, a good chance that 20,000 of her followers are going to go try it is there. With other influencers, that might not be the case. To answer your question though, how do you turn them into actual paying clients? I think you have to put out content which then filters out the people that are just there to see and the people that are actually there to participate. This is a deeper conversation, and this is something which we can give another entire workshop on. So yeah, essentially you just have to put out content, and also put out surveys. We do a lot of surveys for our clients as well. We will put out surveys for things to say, would you guys be willing to buy this? And we put out the surveys to their followers. And sometimes the followers are like, yeah, we would be, and they do. So I hope that's answered your question. The last question that I have here is from Hanya Muhashwa, who says, how often do you recommend you should update your website? How often do I recommend that you should update your website? I would say at least once a month. Technology changes extremely fast. So there's always something new and hot that's out there that your website might need. That's the first thing. Second thing, there's always a new virus every single day, and that virus might be trying to find its way to your website. So you definitely need to make sure that, you are definitely not, you're definitely not just waiting for that virus or that threat to come your way. The third thing that I would say, and why I say once a month, a minimum, is that some updates, especially with open source content management systems, may break your website. So you find you update one plugin, all of a sudden your website doesn't work. So you then need to come and make sure that you're watching that and you're maintaining it, and that everything works as it should. Yes. So I've just gotten through 17 questions. I think that's everything for now. I'm just going to give you guys a minute in case there's somebody whose question that I may not have answered the way they would have wanted, or if they have a follow-up question to me. I'll give it a minute or 30 seconds. All right, cool. I think that should be it. Thank you very much to everybody who has come to this. Okay, cool. I think there is another question, or are there new questions? Oh, good and well. Okay. It seems that there are some questions, some more questions. I just need to find them now. Okay. Welcome. Okay, let me see. Okay, there's people who have commented. Somebody had asked what happened to the sound, or is it just me? Okay, I think that might have been sorted out. Please check your settings. Okay, cool. Okay, somebody also said, which I agree with, who is in Tatting, also getting a graphic designer to help you develop your website from scratch is also good. Whenever you have errors inside the website, they can help you immediately instead of contacting the host developer to help you. I do definitely agree with that. That is definitely a good thing to do. Yeah, and then yes, cool. I think that's it. Please don't forget to send us your presentation. Riabet says, please don't forget to send us your presentation. I definitely won't. I'll share it with the Business and Arts South Africa. And you can also, we will put it up on mincreative.co. And you can find it there. I'm just going to share my screen one last time and kind of give my thank yous to you guys. So essentially, this is our contact information. We are found in Cedarwood House on Bellywoods Office Park in Bryanston, Johannesburg. Our phone number is 010-007-5785. I don't know why I said 83. And then on all social media, we are found at MIN Creative Co. And then our website is www.mincreative.co, just .co. But if should you make the mistake of saying .co.za, you will find us as well. One of the things that I would like to also say is that on Thursday, you're going to have Digify Africa give 2 sessions, one on WhatsApp and how to grow your business. That is something that I would definitely recommend, because WhatsApp is one thing that is really growing in terms of the business space. And it's one place that people really love to communicate. I myself have a WhatsApp business account. Even though it's a personal account, it allows me to communicate with clients much easier and for them to get information from us. The second one is discover tools to grow your business. There were a few questions here where people were asking about, how do they then grow their businesses and how and the likes. And essentially, Digify Africa will definitely help you with some of these answers. So thank you very much for making it through to this chat, and I highly appreciate you guys. From Min Creative Co and BASA, thank you once again.